there, Starwriters. Welcome back to Diary of the Cosmos, where I spill my tea in the corner of the galaxy, share my stories, and sometimes we learn something new along the way. This is part two of my Victorious Make and Shine series, and if part one was about building the foundation, this is where things start to get complicated. Because now we're not just talking about the idea of the show or the direction, we're talking about the characters when the pressure actually hits, the relationships, the insecurities, the parts of them that don't always look pretty but feel real. Part one, which I will put in the iCard above if you haven't seen it yet, we explore half of the main cast and how they evolve in this version of Hollywood arts. But today we're diving into the rest, starting with someone who, on the surface, seems like he has everything figured out, but might be the most misunderstood character in the room. So grab your pen, Star Riders, because we're picking up right where we left off, starting with Beck Oliver. Let's talk about the heartthrob of Victorious, boy who stole my heart when I was 11 years old, Beck Oliver. At a glance, Beck doesn't seem like a character who needs fixing. In Victorious Make It Shine, he largely stays the same on the surface. Attractive, laid back, talented, and seamlessly unbothered. But this reboot finally digs into the one thing the original series never fully explored: the cost of pretty privilege. Beck's conflict isn't that he lacks opportunity, it's that he's never taken seriously. And Hollywood arts teachers, especially acting coaches, often see him as someone who can coast on his looks. In the professional world, casting directors and industry insiders push him towards modeling instead of acting. Even at home, the same dismissal exists. Black comes from a well off family, and while his parents support him financially, they don't support his dreams. His father, in particular, treats acting like a phase, offering backhanded compliments about how Beck will be better suited for modeling or how he could always fall back on the family business. Those comments sting more than outright projection. In Make It Shine, we see a side of Beck that's rarely allowed to exist in the original series: anger. Not explosive rage, but simmering frustration. He's tired of being underestimated, tired of being seen as decoration instead of substance, tired of working just as hard as everyone else only to be told his success is inevitable because of his face. That frustration often manifests as emotional distance. Beck doesn't lash out, he shuts down. He avoids confrontation, he lets things slide and drifts instead of choosing, and that avoidance becomes one of his biggest flaws. Beck's relationship with Jade isolates him more than he realizes. While Jade is deeply passionate and emotionally intense, the relationship leaves little room for vulnerability. Beck doesn't feel like he can be uncertain, afraid, or insecure around her without it becoming a conflict. Because of that, Beck finds emotional safety elsewhere. He confides in Andre, who understands creative frustration better than anyone. Andre is the one Beck can talk to when he feels stuck, underestimated, or creatively blocked. Over time, however, Beck also begins opening up to Tori. Tori listens without judgment. She doesn't idolize him, doesn't dismiss him, or try to control him. She sees Beck as someone who's lost, not someone who's lucky. That connection deepens quietly, and while it isn't immediately romantic, it becomes emotionally intimate in a way that blurs boundaries. And this creates unavoidable tension. Jade senses it. She feels Beck pulling away, not physically, but emotionally, and it triggers her deepest fear: being replaced. For Jade, Beck confiding in Tori isn't just betrayal, it's proof that she's losing control. For Tori, the situation is uncomfortable and complicated, and for Beck, it's easier than confronting the reality of what he actually wants. Beck's journey in Victoria's Make It Shine is about agency. For the first time, he's forced to confront the consequences of staying neutral, of letting others define him, of avoiding conflict, and of losing emotional intimacy as an escape. Beck's journey in Victoria's Make It Shine is about agency. For the first time, he's forced to confront the consequences of staying neutral, of letting others define him, of avoiding conflict, and of using emotional intimacy as an escape. He has to decide whether he wants to be seen or whether being admired from a distance is enough. Because in an industry obsessed with image, Beck's biggest struggle isn't about being desired, it's about being believed. Let's move on to Jade West, arguably the most misunderstood character in the entire series. Like everyone else in Victoria's Make and Shine, Jade stays largely the same in the series. She's still sharp tongued, intimidating, creative, and emotionally intense. What changes is that the reboot finally asked the question the original series avoided. Why is Jade like this? And the answer starts at home. In this reboot, Jay's father is emotionally absent, not dead, not gone, but choosing another life. He's involved in the entertainment industry and is in a relationship with another woman, leaving Jade, her mother, and her brother as an afterthought. Jade grows up watching the industry take precedence over family, love, and accountability. That abandonment leaves a mark. Jade learns early that affection is conditional and that stability is temporary. She internalized the idea that if she doesn't stay sharp, guarded, and in control, she'll be discarded. In her own words, industry and her father turned a good girl bad. This context reframes Jade's cruelty not as randomness but as armor. Jade is one of the most driven students at Hollywood Arts. She doesn't want to be good, she wants to be undeniable. Acting isn't just her passion, it's her survival plan. If she becomes exceptional, she believes she can't be replaced. That fear of being forgotten, overlooked, or traded in for something newer is the engine behind everything she does. This is why Tori threatens her so deeply. Tori's talent feels effortless. Her kindness draws people in naturally. To Jade, that is terrifying. It represents everything Jade never had safety without sacrifice. The reboot also fully explores why Jade and Beck are together, because from the outside, it rarely makes sense. The relationship begins with raw chemistry and rebellion, not emotional compatibility. As part of my headcanon that I mentioned in part one, or in the comments for part one, Jade and Beck hooking up around the school, especially in places like the janitor's closet, becomes symbolic. The relationship is impulsive, secretive, and fueled by intensity rather than trust. Beck represents something Jade craves tension without effort. He sees her darkness and isn't afraid of it, but he also doesn't challenge it. Jade doesn't love Beck because he's safe, she loves him because he's there. And when you've grown up feeling replaceable, consistency feels like love. That love is volatile. Jade is deeply possessive, not just of Beck, but of emotional territory. So when Beck begins opening to Tori, it feels like betrayal on a fundamental level. It's not about cheating, it's about emotional displacement. Jade fears becomes unnecessary. Despite her cruelty, Jade has rules. She hates exploitation. She hates, she despises false authority. She has zero tolerance for adults who abuse power because she's seen firsthand what happens when people prioritize success over responsibility. And that's why, in moments where her goals align with Tori, Jade becomes a dangerous ally. She go to war for the right cause. She just won't apologize for how she fights. Jade's journey isn't about becoming kinder, it's about becoming honest. She has to confront the reality that control doesn't equal security, that fear masquerading as strength will eventually isolate her, and that love built on possession will always collapse under pressure. Jade isn't a villain, she's what happens when a brilliant girl learns too early that softness is a liability and decides that she'll never be powerless again. The last two characters I want to talk about are Robbie and Rex, and I already know this is where some fans might turn on me, but Victoria's Make and Shine isn't interested in preserving gimmicks, it's interested in preserving function. In this reboot, Rex Shapiro is no longer a puppet, he's real.
Next. What have you got?
This little wooden puppet.
I'm not a puppet. I'm a real boy.
5 shillings for the possessed toy. Take it away.
Father, please, don't let him do this.
Next.
Specifically, Robbie's twin brother. Whether he's older or younger is intentionally ambiguous early on, adding to the uneasy dynamic between them. Rex embodies everything Robbie isn't allowed to be. Visually and socially, Rex carries a chaotic, laid back energy. Think Roderick Heffley meets Hollywood arts.
That'll never happen. Not a chance. There's no way that girl will ever talk.
Really? Okay. You see that clock? If you're so confident, well, what you waiting for, wimp?
He's blunt, flirtatious, loud, and unapologetically messy. He moves through parties, rehearsals, and social circles with ease while Robbie watches from the sidelines. Where Robbie overthinks, Rex reacts. Where Robbie internalizes, Rex says the quiet part out loud. Rex earned his place at Hollywood Arts not through acting or academics, but through music, specifically percussion. He's a raw, aggressive drummer with instinctive rhythm, the kind of performer who commands attention even when he's technically imperfect. He's often compared to a young Travis Barker, not because he reached that level yet, but because the potential is obvious. Rex is still training, still undisciplined, and still reckless. But unlike Robbie, his flaws are always seen as edgy instead of weakness. Rex continues to function as the voice Robbie never learn how to use, but now that voice exists outside of Robbie's control. He says what Robbie is thinking. He flirts with who Robbie wants. He mocks the people Robbie is afraid of. He challenges authority Robbie avoids. And sometimes Rex protects Robbie. Other times he embarrasses him. And occasionally he sabotages him even without realizing it. Their twinhood creates a constant tension between dependency and resentment. Robbie relies on Rex to survive socially, but Rex's presence also reinforces everything Robbie fears about himself. To preserve the strange meta humor of the original Victorious series, the reboot introduced a long running rumor within Hollywood Arts that Rex wasn't always real. Some students swear that when Robbie and Rex were younger, Rex was a puppet, and that some bizarre scientific experiment or device somehow turned him human. The Shapiro family dismisses it as a ridiculous rumor, insisting Rex was always been Robbie's twin brother. The show intentionally and scatters small, unsettling hints like conflicting childhood photos, features remembering Robbie without Rex, referencing memories that don't quite line up. And over the course of later seasons, the show gradually debunks the theory, but not before it sparks endless debates, think pieces, and fan speculation. The truth matters less than what the rumor represents, because Rob Rex feels unreal to Robbie too. Rex isn't just some comic relief. He's contrast, he's pressured, he's temptation. He is the version of masculinity, confidence, and social dominance that Robbie believes he needs, but might lose himself chasing. Rex thrives in the spotlight. Survives in the shadows. And the question Make It Shine keeps asking is simple. What happens when your loudest voice isn't actually yours? Now, let's talk about the other half of the twin dynamic, Robbie Shapiro. Because Robbie's story in Victoria's Make It Shine is less about reinvention and more about recontextualization. In this reboot, Robbie is still awkward, intelligent, socially anxious, and painfully self aware. What changes is how those traits are treated. Robbie isn't a joke, he's a kid who's learned early that being invisible was safer than being rejected. Robbie is admitted to Hollywood Arts as a performance and comedy writing hybrid, a student whose strength lies in character work, observational humor, and scripted performance rather than traditional acting. When before Hollywood Arts, Robbie performed ventriloquism. I can never say that word. Ventriloquism, that word, in character comedy using Rex, not because he lacked talent, but because he lacked confidence. Puppet wasn't their talent; it was the shield. Robbie used Rex as a way to say things he's afraid to say himself, jokes that were sharper, rude, and more honest. Judges and instructors initially saw his act as gimmicky, but what ultimately got Robbie accepted was the writing underneath it. his timing, his wit, his ability to create a fully realized character voice. By the time the series begins, Rex is no longer a puppet, but the habit remains. Robbie still struggles to speak without filtering himself, still doubts his instincts, and still second guesses his place in the room. At Hollywood Arts, Robbie exists in contrast to Rex, where Rex commands attention effortlessly, Robbie overanalyzes every interaction. Teacher praises Robbie's intellect, but question his presence. Casting instructors tell him he's interesting but not marketable. The gap eats at him. Rex becomes both a crutch and a complication, constantly voicing the thoughts Robbie is afraid to claim as his own. Sometimes that helps, other times it makes Robbie feel smaller, like even his personality has been outsourced. Robbie's closest and most consistent friend is Sidney Van Cleef. He's nerdy, unsettling, but fiercely loyal best friend. Sinjin is weird in a way Robbie understands. Their friendship is built on shared isolation, dark humor, and being perpetually overlooked. Sinjin exists mostly in the fridges of Hollywood Arts, and so does Robbie until Rex changes the equation. Thanks to Rex's social confidence and Kat's open hearted nature, Robbie gains access to the main cast in a way he never could on his own. Rex pulls him into parties and group settings. Kat treats Robbie with genuine kindness, never making him feel like a burden or a joke. Because of Kat, Robbie learns that being quiet doesn't make him disposable. Because of Rex, he learns how to be seen even when it terrifies him. Robbie's journey in Make It Shine is about ownership. Ownership of his voice, ownership of his talent, ownership of his place at Hollywood Arts. As the series progresses, Robbie slowly begins performing without Rex's influence, experimenting with stand up, solo character work, and writing that's more personal than performative. It's uncomfortable. Sometimes it fails, but at the end of the day, it's real. And that's the tension at the heart of his story. Robbie doesn't need Rex to be talented. He needs Rex to believe he's allowed to be heard. Now that characters' personalities, traits, and backstories are out the way, I want to pause for a moment and talk about the why of this reboot, because everything I've discussed so far leads back to one central idea. Tori's Make It Shine isn't just a reboot about talent, it's a story about survival in an industry that doesn't protect young people equally. At Hollywood Arts, every student is talented. That's the baseline. What separates them isn't skill, it's access, timing, image, favoritism, and how much of themselves they're willing to sacrifice to stay visible. Make It Shine isn't about fame in the glossy celebratory sense. It's about the pressure to perform constantly, to brand yourself early, to compete with your peers while pretending you're still friends. It's about how different personalities survive the same system in different ways. Like, for an example, Forrest survives by adapting, but at the cost of her self confidence. Jade survives by controlling everything, but at the cost of intimacy. Andre survives by giving, but at the cost of giving himself. Kat survives by softening, but risks being erased. Beck survives by coasting, but stagnates. Robbie survives by hiding, but loses his voice. And Trina survives by knowing everything, but at the cost of trust. No one is the villain here, the system is. Make It Shine asks a question the original series never fully explored. What happens when kids are told their worth depends on how well they perform before they even know who they are? This reboot doesn't exist to darken Victorious for the sake of edginess. It exists to tell the truth the original show only hinted at, that talent is real, dreams are real, but so are burnt out rejection, favoritism, and fear. And how each character shines says more about their survival strategy than their skill. Now that the foundation is clear, I want to briefly talk about how Victoria's Make It Shine functions as an actual series, starting with season one, not episode by episode, but emotionally. Season one begins with belief. Most of these students still believe that talent will be enough, that if they work hard, stay true to themselves, and prove their worth, Hollywood arts will reward them fairly. There's excitement, ambition, and the thrill of being chosen. But that belief doesn't last. As the season progresses, cracks begin to form. Favoritism becomes obvious. Some students receive opportunities faster than others. Criticism feels personal. Teachers contradict each other. Industry professionals enter the picture with conflicting advice. Students start comparing themselves not just to each other, but to what they think success is supposed to look like. Midway through the season, the characters begin making compromises. Some are small, changing their image, staying quiet, accepting unfair treatment. Others are larger, such as emotional manipulation, using connections, betraying trust, or pushing themselves past healthy limits. Friendships strain, rivalries sharpen, romance complicates everything, but by the end of season one, the illusion is gone. The characters realize that Hollywood arts isn't just a school, it's a filter. Not everyone will make it through unchanged. Some will harden, some will burn out, some will some will reinvent themselves, and some will realize they're chasing a version of success that was never meant for them. Season one doesn't end with everyone winning, it ends with clarity. Students understand that shining isn't about being the best, it's about deciding what you're willing to lose in order to stay in the spotlight. And that understanding is what propels the rest of the series forward. And that is Victoria's Make It Shine, not just a reboot, but a reimagining of what this story could have been if it was allowed to grow with its audience. Because at the end of the day, this version of Victoria's isn't really about talent, it's about survival. It's about what happens when young people are placed in an environment where their worth is constantly measured, compared, and performed before they even have the chance to understand who they are outside of it. Every character shines in their own way, but how they shine and what they lose in the process is what defines them. So before we close this chapter, I want to ask you something, Star Riders. After everything we explored in Make It Shine, would you still want to attend Hollywood Arts knowing what it actually takes to succeed? Let me know in the comments. I really want to hear your thoughts. And if you made it to the end of the series, thank you for being here, for listening, and for writing this story with me. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and ring that bell to join the journey through the stars for more out of this world ideas. Till next time, keep your pen to the stars and your heart in the pages. Sincerely yours.